Have you ever wondered what would happen if you simply vanished? No texts, no calls, no checking in, just silence. In a world where everyone is constantly connected, disappearing isn't merely stepping away, it's shaking the very foundation of relationships. What happens when you stop showing up? When you remove yourself from their world without explanation? At first, they might not notice. Maybe they'll assume you're busy. But as the days pass, silence transforms from absence into a presence of its own, louder than words, heavier than any goodbye. This isn't about playing games. It's about understanding your power. You see, people only truly value what they believe they could lose. When you step back, you force them to face the void you leave behind. They start to question, why aren't you reaching out? Have they lost you? Were they wrong to take you for granted? Disappearing for 30 days isn't just about them. It's about you. It's a test of discipline, patience, and self-worth. Can you resist the urge to check in? Can you walk away without looking back? Most people can't. They crave reassurance, even if it means settling for crumbs. But those who master silence command attention. In these 30 days, something strange happens. They start to miss you. But it's not just your presence they miss. It's how they felt around you. The comfort, the validation, the sense of being wanted. And when that's gone, insecurity creeps in, doubt takes hold, and the mind plays tricks, rewriting history and making them question if they ever truly appreciated you. Here's the harsh truth. People rarely change when things are comfortable. Growth happens in discomfort. Regret is born in silence. And when you vanish, you give them something they didn't expect, a reason to reflect. But here's where most people fail. They disappear, only to return the same. That's a mistake. If you come back unchanged, they'll assume it was all an act. But if you return different, stronger, more confident, more mysterious, you don't just return, you arrive. That's exactly what I'll break down in this video. I'll show you why space isn't just distance, it's strategy. Why silence isn't weakness, it's power. And most importantly, I'll reveal the key move you need to make after these 30 days. Because disappearing isn't the goal, becoming unforgettable is. Stick with me till the end. You won't regret it. Vanish like a ghost, return like a legend. They beg, they chase, they overanalyze every little detail, trying to piece together what went wrong. Desperate to fix things, they reach for explanations, grand gestures, anything that can bring back what's slipping away. But the strongest move isn't in words, it's in silence. Walking away with quiet confidence, without explanations or emotional goodbyes, sends a message louder than any plea. It's a shift in energy, steady, unshaken, and unreadable. Because the less they hear from you, the more they feel your absence. As the Stoics remind us, self-restraint is power. Picture this. You disappear for 30 days. No texts, no calls, no likes on their posts, no subtle breadcrumbs to remind them you exist. Just pure, disciplined silence. At first, they may not notice. Maybe they even think they've won, that they had the final word, the upper hand. That's fine. Let them. But as the days pass, something changes. The silence isn't just quiet, it's deafening. It follows them everywhere, creeping into their thoughts like a shadow they can't shake. Why haven't they reached out? Did you move on? Was I wrong about them? That's the power of withdrawal. People only truly value what they fear losing. When you remove yourself completely, they have no choice but to sit with the discomfort of your absence. It's like removing their favorite song from the playlist. It was always there, taken for granted. But now that it's missing, the silence feels unbearable. Lao Tzu once said, "Silence is a source of great strength." Most people can't handle it. They panic, filling the void with noise, trying to grasp at anything that makes them feel in control again. But the one who embraces silence is the one they can't forget. This isn't about revenge. It's about transformation. Instead of reacting emotionally, you turn inward. You sharpen your mind, strengthen your body, refine your purpose. You use silence not as a weapon, but as a tool to rebuild yourself. You become the kind of person who doesn't just disappear, they evolve. And that evolution doesn't go unnoticed. If you choose to return, you won't be the same. You won't be the person they thought they had figured out. They'll see someone different, someone who doesn't need their validation, someone they misjudged, someone they now can't quite understand. That mystery, that quiet confidence, that unshaken presence reignites attraction. Not words, not explanations, but the energy of someone who has stepped into their own power. Most people crack under silence. They break under the weight of uncertainty. They chase, they explain, they try to fill the space. But those who understand the power of walking away don't beg, don't plead. They vanish like a ghost. And when they return, if they return, they come back like a legend. So the real question is, can you handle the silence? When presence becomes power, attention is currency. It's given freely, spent carelessly, and expected without effort. They're used to it, messages lighting up their screens, compliments sliding into their day, small signs that someone somewhere is always paying attention. It's background noise, steady, predictable. But what happens when that noise stops? When the presence they assumed would always be there suddenly isn't? It's like pulling the oxygen from a room. They may not have noticed it before, but they sure notice when it's gone. The absence isn't just an empty space. It's a vacuum sucking in thoughts, emotions, and most dangerously, curiosity. A Stoic understands this. They don't fear silence, they wield it. They know that when something is always available, it's taken for granted. A favorite song played on repeat fades into the background. A message that always gets a reply loses its spark. But when that song suddenly stops, when those messages turn to silence, the mind starts to wonder. Why the sudden shift? Where did they go? Did I misjudge them? At first there's certainty they'll be back. But as time stretches on, that certainty wavers. Confidence erodes day by day, and doubt creeps in. What if they've moved on? What if they're better off without me? What if I was wrong? And that's when the shift happens. The predictable figure in the background transforms into a question mark, an unsolved mystery. The absence doesn't just leave space, it leaves an imprint. And nothing draws attention more than something that refuses to be understood. Seneca once said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." The one who always lingers, who always reaches out first, who is always waiting becomes invisible, expected, overlooked. But the one who knows when to step back, who values themselves enough to disappear without explanation, that's the one they can't ignore. This isn't about games, it's about gravity. The less available something is, the more it's desired. It's why people chase things just out of reach. Why a closed door is more intriguing than an open one. This isn't about words, it's about making them feel the loss. Because people don't change through explanations or ultimatums. They change when they feel the absence, when they experience the shift. The real test is, can you hold the silence? Can you resist the pull to check in, to break the discomfort, to fill the space with weak reassurance? Because that's what they expect you to do. To waver, to return, to slip back into predictability. But a person who understands their worth doesn't need to be seen to be felt. They don't need to explain their silence. They don't need to ask for respect. They command it simply by stepping away. So the question is, can you disappear long enough for them to feel it? Or will you break under the weight of your own absence? Because if you can hold the line, if you can resist the need for immediate validation, something shifts. The predictable comfort they once had is gone, and in its place, uncertainty, curiosity, a realization that maybe, just maybe, they made the wrong call. But the game isn't about making them realize it. The game is about whether you have the discipline to walk away and never look back. The less you reveal, the more they want to know. Mystery is fuel. It sparks curiosity, ignites attraction, and keeps people wondering. The moment you step back, a shift happens. Suddenly they start thinking, where did they go? What are they doing? Why aren't they chasing me? That's when your value rises, not because you changed, but because you stopped being predictable. Predictability kills excitement. It makes people comfortable, and comfort breeds indifference. When something is always available, it blends into the background. But the second it disappears, the mind can't help but notice the empty space. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." Most people make the mistake of valuing attention, validation, or approval from others. They give too much text, too much show, too much interest, until they become just another expected part of the day, predictable, safe, familiar. And what's familiar is never thrilling. But the moment you remove yourself, everything shifts. The absence isn't just space. It's a void that demands attention. It's like a song that played every day without notice, and then suddenly, silence. It's like eating the same meal over and over, taking it for granted until one day it's no longer there, and the craving kicks in. This isn't about playing games. It's about understanding human nature. People don't value what they always have. They value what they fear losing. The Stoics understood this deeply. They preached self-mastery, the ability to control oneself rather than being controlled by external forces. Epictetus said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them." Most people suffer because they can't let go. They chase validation. They need to be seen, heard, noticed. But the one who masters their emotions, who doesn't act on impulse, who doesn't need constant reassurance, that's the one who commands attention. So what happens when they sense that you're no longer waiting, when they realize they don't have the same hold over you? That's when attraction shifts. Because now you're no longer just another person seeking their attention. You're someone who stands apart, unaffected, unmoved, indifferent to the outcome. And nothing is more intriguing than someone who doesn't need to be chosen. Oscar Wilde once said, "The mystery of love is greater than the mystery of death." Why? Because the unknown is intoxicating. A person they can predict is a person they can forget. But a person they can't figure out, that's someone they can't ignore. So ask yourself, are you willing to let go of control to gain it? Can you embrace the discomfort of silence, knowing it speaks louder than words? Because the truth is, those who chase are forgotten, but those who become something worth chasing are never overlooked. When memories become obsession, silence does something strange to the mind. It turns old moments into questions, past conversations into riddles, and simple memories into something far bigger than they were at the time. When you disappear, They don't just notice your absence, they start reliving your presence. At first, they brush it off. They'll reach out any day now. But as the days stretch on, that certainty starts to crack. They scroll through old messages looking for clues, replay past interactions, wondering if they missed something. Were they really into me? Did I misread the signs? The human mind has a way of romanticizing the past, especially when something is missing in the present. This is why space is powerful. It forces appreciation. It makes people see what they once overlooked. The Stoics understood this well. Distance reveals value in a way that presence never can. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Most people don't reflect when they're comfortable. They only reflect when they feel a loss. This is why being the one who steps back is so effective. It disrupts their sense of control. In a world where validation is handed out freely, the one who vanishes without explanation stands apart. Seneca once said, "Absence diminishes minor passions and inflames great ones." When something was never that deep to begin with, distance erases it. But when something had real weight, absence makes it impossible to ignore. And that's where the real shift happens. Because now, the silence isn't just quiet, it's a question mark. The confidence they once had begins to erode. Were they more important than I realized? Did I underestimate them? And the more they think, the deeper they fall into memory. That's the power of leaving without a trace, not as a tactic, not as a trick, but as a true understanding of human nature. People don't truly see what they had until they're forced to see what's missing. And when that realization hits, it lingers. When silence becomes strength, it does two things. It extinguishes a candle and fuels a fire. If there was nothing real, your absence will pass unnoticed. But if even a spark existed, space will make it grow. This is where real power lies, not in chasing, not in convincing, but in doing nothing. By stepping back, you shift everything. You stop being predictable. You stop being expected. You become a question, an uncertainty. And uncertainty is powerful. People don't lose sleep over things they understand. They lose sleep over what they can't figure out. Why the sudden silence? Were they really that easy to lose? That's when the doubt creeps in. This is the moment of truth. Can you resist the pull to break the silence? Can you sit with that discomfort, knowing that your absence says more than words ever could? Because most people crack. They reach out. They explain themselves. They give away their power just to feel in control again. But the ones who hold the line are the ones who command respect. A Stoic does not beg for attention. They let their absence demand it. As time passes, the weight of silence grows heavier. Memories once dismissed now resurface with new meaning. Moments once overlooked become moments worth reconsidering. Nostalgia isn't just about missing the past. It's about realizing its worth too late. Think about it. We don't notice water until the well runs dry. We don't miss the sun until the storm rolls in. Absence doesn't just remind, it redefines. When something is truly valuable, distance doesn't erase it. It makes it undeniable. So ask yourself, can stepping back be the key to moving forward? Can silence be the lesson that speaks louder than any words ever could? Because in the end, those who understand their own worth never have to prove it. When others notice, it's already too late. People don't process emotions in isolation. They talk, analyze, and relive moments through conversation. And before they realize it, those around them start noticing. Why do you keep checking your phone? You seem distracted. Is everything okay? At first, they brush it off, pretending nothing has changed. But the more they hear these questions, the harder it is to ignore the truth. Something feels off. And it's not just something, it's you. This is the silent weight of your absence. It doesn't just exist in their mind, it seeps into their world. It lingers in the moments when they instinctively reach for their phone, only to find an empty screen. It shows up in conversations where your name unexpectedly surfaces, forcing them to confront feelings they thought they had buried. It's in the slight hesitation before they assure themselves and others that they've moved on. Because deep down, a small voice whispers, "What if I was wrong?" Doubt is a slow, creeping force. At first, it's just a passing thought. But when their friends start noticing a shift in them, when they catch themselves feeling a little more off balance than they'd like to admit, that doubt grows louder. It's no longer just in their head. It's reflected back at them through subtle glances, casual questions, and awkward pauses in conversation. This is where most people make a mistake. They panic. They rush to fill the void, texting, calling, trying to prove their worth, terrified of being forgotten. But a person who understands their own value doesn't chase. They don't force. They allow time to do the work for them. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. That means no pleading, no explaining, no justifying. The person who constantly seeks validation is at the mercy of someone else's attention. But the one who walks away with quiet confidence commands attention without ever having to ask for it. Absence creates presence. When you step back without a dramatic exit, without emotional appeals, without trying to make them see your worth, something shifts. Suddenly, they're not just thinking about you. They're feeling your absence in ways they never expected. Every unanswered message, every conversation where your name lingers a second too long, every moment of silence that stretches just enough to feel uncomfortable. It all plants a seed. And that seed doesn't grow because you chased after them. It grows because you had the strength to let go. Most people believe they need to remind others of what they lost, but life has a way of doing that on its own. Time forces reflection, and distance forces clarity. The realization doesn't hit all at once. It builds. It starts as an echo in the back of their mind and slowly turns into something they can't shake. And when it finally hits, it won't just be a thought. It will be a feeling, the kind that lingers long after the moment has passed. The real test is this. Can you remain still while they come to terms with what they lost? Because the person who can master silence, who can let go without fear, is the one who leaves the deepest impact. When you vanish, they start searching. Social media is more than just a platform. It's a window into someone's life. It's where people check for signs, where they seek reassurance without having to ask. So when you suddenly go quiet, no posts, no reactions, no updates, it doesn't go unnoticed. At first, they may not think much of it. Maybe you're just busy. But as time passes, a subtle unease creeps in. Why haven't they liked my post? Why aren't they watching my stories? That little notification they once took for granted is now missing. Suddenly they're checking their phone twice, scrolling back just to make sure they didn't overlook your name. This is where most people go wrong. They try to force a reaction, a cryptic quote about moving on, a gym selfie meant to make them jealous, a group photo with exaggerated laughter hoping to spark curiosity. But it's all too obvious, and worse, it reeks of insecurity. A Stoic understands that true power doesn't come from proving anything. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That means no staged moves, no digital breadcrumbs, no attempts to manipulate perception. Instead, you remove yourself completely, and in that absence, you say everything most people can't handle. The silence is powerful. Most people panic, needing to show they're unbothered, needing to remind the world and themselves that they've moved on. But the irony is, the harder you try to be seen, the easier you are to ignore. The moment you truly disappear, that's when they feel it. Because in a world where everyone is desperately trying to be noticed, the one who vanishes, he stands out the most. Seneca once said, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." Social media is just another form of speech. And when you step into silence, when you stop performing, you create something rare, a genuine absence, one that lingers, that unsettles, that forces reflection. And here's the paradox. When you stop looking, they start searching. When you stop posting, they start checking. When you stop proving, they start wondering. Not because you told them to, but because human nature hates uncertainty. The mind can't help but chase what it doesn't understand. This isn't about playing games. It's about being hard to forget. By stepping away from the digital noise, you create space for them to truly notice the void you leave behind. Suddenly, your lack of presence becomes more intriguing than any caption, post, or message ever could be. And the real question is, can you resist the urge? Can you embrace the silence without seeking a reaction? Because the person who can, the one who removes rather than proves, is the one they never forget. When silence makes them question everything, some people thrive on validation. Even the most self-assured individuals experience a boost in knowing someone is paying attention, a thrill in feeling desired. So what happens when you remove that attention entirely? When you quietly slip into silence, offering no explanations and no reassurances? Suddenly they're left with a question they didn't expect. Did I misread everything? Was I not enough? That small seed of doubt, once non-existent, begins to take root. Yet this isn't about trickery or mind games. It's a natural reaction to losing what was once taken for granted. A Stoic approach teaches that true power lies not in controlling others, but in controlling yourself. Withholding constant reassurance doesn't come from malice or spite. It comes from an understanding that when something is always available, it's all too easy for others to overlook its value. Think about it. If there's an endless supply of sunlight, you hardly notice it beaming down every day until the storm clouds roll in and you suddenly crave its warmth. That craving, that longing, emerges precisely because you can't have what you once assumed would always be there. By stepping back, you break a cycle. The cycle of being the one who always texts first, who always responds immediately, who always adjusts their schedule to fit someone else's whims. That routine might feel normal, even necessary, especially if you've been conditioned to think that consistent availability is what keeps people interested. But in reality, predictability can suffocate desire. When every action is expected, there's no intrigue, no tension, no spark to reignite curiosity. Now everything changes. The silence you create isn't merely the absence of conversation, it's a void that demands to be acknowledged. Without your constant messages, they are left to question what they once assumed was certain. Why did the texts stop? Did something happen? Were they only being nice before? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Once you step away, you're no longer coloring their thoughts with your presence. They begin to color their own, often painting scenarios of doubt, curiosity, and reflection. In the quiet, they might scroll through old conversations, analyzing each response for hidden meaning. They could check to see if you viewed their latest posts or stories, searching for any trace that you're still lurking in the background. This might sound dramatic, but it's human nature. People chase what feels out of reach. If you were once a daily fixture in their life, your sudden silence upends everything they thought they knew about the situation. This isn't about cruelty or making them suffer. It's about allowing them to confront their own feelings that might have been drowned out by your constant presence. Think about how music sounds when there's no background noise. Each note becomes sharper, each lyric clearer. The same is true for emotions. When the constant chatter of reassurance fades, only then do they fully register what they might be losing. Meanwhile, you discover something profound about yourself. By doing nothing, by choosing silence over pursuit, you prove that you don't need external validation to feel secure. You're no longer frantically checking your phone, hoping for a quick reply. You're not bending over backward to sustain a conversation that might be one-sided. Instead, you're learning to be at peace, whether they return to you or not. This is the heart of Stoic detachment, realizing that your well-being doesn't hinge on another person's attention. Of course, it's never easy to go silent. Doubts can gnaw at you. Am I making a mistake? Will they forget me entirely? But the key is to recognize that true connection can't be built on fear of being forgotten. If they only value you when you're constantly available, was it real value to begin with? As Epictetus taught, we suffer not from events, but from our judgment about them. If you believe that stepping back means losing them forever, you'll act out of panic. But if you trust that your worth doesn't depend on perpetual interaction, you'll find a calm that can't be shaken by someone else's response. And here's the subtle truth. When they do start to feel that loss, it's not purely about missing your presence. It's about missing how they felt when they received your attention. They begin to wonder if their confidence was ever truly their own, or if it hinged on the stream of messages and validation you provided. The moment they recognize this shift can spark a deeper question. Am I drawn to them, or am I drawn to the way they made me feel? That introspection can lead to genuine change, because reflection rarely happens in a place of comfort. It emerges when the routine breaks, and we're forced to look at what's really going on beneath the surface. None of this is meant to encourage manipulation. It's a reminder that doing less can reveal more. Constantly giving attention can sometimes rob others of the chance to realize what they truly want or need. When you step away, you're not just changing their perspective. You're gaining your own clarity. You learn who reaches out when you're not the one initiating, who truly values your presence instead of simply enjoying your convenience. And if they do come back, it's not because you begged for it. It's because your absence spoke louder than any argument or confession of feelings ever could. In the end, you find that self-respect grows in silence. By controlling your impulses and resisting the urge to chase, you uncover an inner strength that isn't swayed by whether someone responds or not. That unshakable center is the hallmark of a Stoic mindset, a readiness to stand firm in your own worth, no matter how others may react. When you trust yourself enough to remain still amidst uncertainty, you become someone who's truly unforgettable. And that, in the final analysis, is when silence makes them question everything. When you finally discover your own unbreakable core, silence turns curiosity into obsession. What does the mind do when facing the unknown? It obsesses, fixating on the missing pieces until every thought circles back to the same question. Why did they disappear? Suddenly, the absence isn't just noticed, it's felt. And in that stillness, the imagination runs wild, painting scenarios both enticing and unsettling. Epictetus once observed that people suffer more in their own imagination than in reality. When there's no clear explanation for someone's withdrawal, the human mind fills the void with every possibility. Are they moving on? Have they found someone else? Did I ever really know them? These questions become a loop, spiraling deeper into obsession with each replay. This is where the real power of silence reveals itself. The need for certainty is wired into human nature because unanswered questions feel like open wounds. There's a craving for closure, an insatiable desire to fill the emptiness with any kind of explanation, even the worst ones. So when someone vanishes without a hint of why, it forces the other person's thoughts to lock onto them, even against their own will. The mystery becomes stronger than any word or action could ever be. At first, the mind might cling to confidence. They'll come back any day now. It's just a phase. But as days turn into weeks, that certainty starts to unravel. Silence becomes evidence of a far deeper shift. Maybe the ties that once felt so secure were never as strong as believed. It's unsettling. The emptiness challenges all the assumptions once held dear. The question lingers, were they more important than I realized? Did I misunderstand the depth of our connection? Here's the part that most people overlook. When you chase someone who has stepped away, you surrender your power. By trying to force communication, you confirm that they can dictate the emotional climate. In contrast, when you remain silent, when you choose patience over pleading, you reclaim your autonomy. It isn't manipulation, it's mastery of self. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That single truth separates those who panic and plead from those who understand the potential in quiet resolve. Ironically, the less you do, the more the other person's curiosity grows. In a world where constant attention is the norm, likes, messages, virtual check-ins, stepping back creates a rare vacuum. Humans are drawn to mysteries, especially those that offer no immediate answers. By offering nothing, you hand them everything to wonder about. They think, are they really gone? Did I interpret all those signals incorrectly? Were my assumptions wrong all along? Each unanswered question amplifies the desire to find out more. Consider how a single dark hallway in a brightly lit house immediately draws the eye. That's what silence does. It's an unlit corridor in someone's mind, prompting them to explore every corner for answers. They might retrace old messages, looking for overlooked clues. They might scroll through past photos or mutual connections, hoping to catch a sign of your presence. The very act of searching becomes its own emotional journey, a loop of curiosity that refuses to die down. Yet this approach is not a game designed to hurt another person. True Stoicism is about self-control, not cruelty. Epictetus reminded followers that suffering often comes from our interpretation of events rather than the events themselves. Silence, therefore, isn't a weapon, but a boundary, a signal that one will no longer participate in a dynamic of constant reassurance. It invites the other person to wrestle with their own thoughts, to figure out how much they truly value what they assumed they had. Of course, there's a cost. Standing firm in silence isn't easy. Doubts sneak in. By pushing them away, will this end all possibilities of connection? But a deeper question emerges. If they only stay because I'm always available, Is that real value or just convenience? True bonds don't vanish when tested by distance. They often become clearer in isolation. Realizing that one's worth isn't tied to perpetual contact is freeing. It allows you to discover who seeks you out when you're no longer offering constant attention. This quiet approach can extend beyond relationships. The principle of less is more resonates in nearly every aspect of life. Setting boundaries at work, giving people room to show initiative, or simply taking time for solitude. By not always rushing to fill gaps or answer questions, you encourage reflection, creativity, and self-awareness in both yourself and those around you. Seneca argued that time is a valuable resource, and silence is one way to reclaim it. When you protect your time and energy, you remind others that you're not an infinite well of reassurance. In the end, silence teaches a lesson words can't convey. Those who remain unshaken by the need for outside validation hold genuine power. They set the tone. By choosing to step away, you grant others the opportunity to realize what was at stake. If they come to appreciate it, the connection can grow stronger from a place of respect rather than routine. If not, you've still gained something priceless, a deeper understanding of your own resilience. That's when curiosity truly turns into obsession. Every unspoken detail, every moment without an answer, becomes a magnet pulling thoughts back to the one who vanished. And for the person who chose silence, there's a newfound sense of freedom in knowing that real strength doesn't need to announce itself. It's the quiet certainty that you are more than someone else's fleeting source of validation. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Shift that perspective to communication and attention, and it becomes clear. By wanting less from others, by not chasing or begging, you come to possess more of yourself. When absence turns doubt into regret, at some point they start replaying their choices. Did I make a mistake? Should I have treated them differently? That certainty they once had, the confidence in walking away or taking you for granted, now feels shaky. Doubt creeps in, and doubt, when left unchecked, is one of the most powerful forces in the human mind. This is where detachment becomes a weapon. Most people expect you to wait, to linger, to keep the door cracked open just in case. They assume you'll check in, leave small signs that you're still hoping for another chance. But when you don't, when you refuse to chase, refuse to plead, refuse to seek validation, that's when their mind starts working against them. Seneca once said, "We suffer twice, once in reality and once in imagination." And now they're suffering in imagination over you, wondering where you are, what you're doing, and worst of all, who you might be doing it with. They begin to re-examine the past, but now from a different angle. The moments they dismissed now seem more significant. The absence they once thought was trivial now feels overwhelming. The difference between those who thrive and those who fade is simple. Most people hope for this moment. They sit by their phone, waiting for a message, secretly craving the validation that they are missed. But a person who truly understands their worth, they don't wait. They evolve. They don't live in the past. They build their future. And when the other person finally reaches out, they won't find the same person they walked away from. They'll find someone stronger, because real power isn't in making them regret their choices. It's in becoming so complete, so self-assured, that their absence never broke you in the first place. That's when attraction reignites, not through words, not through effort, but through the quiet confidence of someone who never needed to be chosen. because they had already chosen themselves. Now they see it. The value was always there, but they only recognize it now that it's gone. That's the irony of human nature. What's always available is rarely appreciated. But the moment something is removed, when it's no longer within reach, its worth becomes undeniable. This is why walking away with confidence is more powerful than any explanation. Most people try to convince, to explain, to plead their case, believing that if they just say the right thing, the other person will suddenly realize their worth. But that's not how attraction or respect works. You don't prove your value through words. You prove it by doing what most are too afraid to do, removing yourself completely. Because when something disappears, the mind doesn't just notice it, it fixates. The silence becomes deafening. The absence lingers far longer than any argument ever could. A person who knows their worth never demands respect, then they embody it. No pleading, no convincing, no chasing, just self-respect in its purest form. Walking away and letting reality teach the lesson for you. And now they feel it, the difference, the shift. The space that was once filled by you is empty, and nothing else quite replaces it. They might distract themselves, surround themselves with noise, even convince themselves that they're fine. But deep down, there's a void, and that void speaks louder than any words ever could. They look back at what they took for granted, but now it's too late, because you didn't wait. You didn't press pause on your life, hoping they'd wake up and see your worth. You moved, you grew, and that is what makes someone unforgettable. Not speeches, not grand gestures, not desperate attempts to be noticed, just presence when it matters, and absence when it's necessary. Because in the end, the ones who leave the deepest impact aren't those who fight to be seen. They're the ones who can walk away and never look back,